to me, it's clear that he's getting ready to do something horrifically nefarious, like boots on the ground. I think it's time for people to start thinking about how they're going to arm in their own communities.
Russia. Sabrina Hank, welcome back to the program. Tell us about your adventures in Putin land.
Thanks, Tom. Well, it was before Putin's time. It was actually a more hopeful time. It was in the 90s. So I did trademark licensing agreements everywhere, including Russia, China, South America, et cetera. And I had to go to Russia because our licensee eventually challenged our trademark after years of successfully doing business together and a great symbiosis. They decided to challenge it. The reason I'm alarmed by this latest move, which I mean, it's kind of hard to figure out what to be alarmed by. It's almost quaint to worry about corrupt practices, given that we may be seeing jackboots on the ground within a month. Not to be an alarmist, but I am alarmed. So foreign corrupt practices, bribery almost seems quaint compared to that potential. But when I was there doing business with a Russian licensee, I had to go to the Patent, which is like the U.S. Trademark and Patent Office. We were facing a challenge, and one of the directors said to me point blank, "Your client is at a disadvantage legally." And I said, "Why?" And then she said, "Because you're not allowed to bribe officials," with her hand out, basically. So at that time, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act was in effect, and before Trump's time, federal law really mattered. Most corporations I did business with would have nothing to do with a request for a bribery. And certainly my client didn't. We decided to dig our heels in and litigated. We hired Baker McKenzie out of Moscow, and we litigated. We spent many years, millions of dollars, and eventually won. The reason it's so alarming is that Trump, there's a press release today where Trump is saying we're suspending the enforcement of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which is the very thing that kept me from paying a bribe in Russia, because he says it's an unfair playing field. Well, that's just ridiculous. What he's done in doing is making it far more dangerous to do business abroad. And you have to wonder why is he so obsessed with gutting corrupt and bribery laws? In his first term, Rex Tillerson wouldn't go along with it, but he wanted to set aside the corruption laws and the bribery laws then as well. It suggests, obviously, that he thinks bribery is a fine way of doing business. Mm-hmm. American businesses are not at a disadvantage by not bribing. They are going to be made much more vulnerable to bribery requests, extortions, and the killings that are going on in Moscow are also frightening. I stayed at the Radisson Stolichnaya, which was right across the street from the Moscow subway, which is a beautiful old Stalin-era subway without really a scratch on the seats. It's crazy. Yeah, I stayed there because of the proximity to the subway station. One of the American businessmen who helped develop that Radisson was gunned down while I was there on his way to walking down the stairs to the subway. He had started saying that he was fighting with the Chechen mafia, that Russians wouldn't play fair. Nothing could be more true than what he said. Russians don't play fair. It's part of their ethos. Putin is a KGB trained agent. Anyone who doesn't see or know that he is disappearing critics and disappearing businesses that won't play along with him isn't paying attention. We don't have accurate figures right now on the number of business people who have been murdered in Russia, but at least 38 that I've seen documented. And you have to understand, Russian state news doesn't let this information out. So we don't have an accurate grasp on how many executives and how many business people are murdered in Russia every year. But it's a way of doing business. The man who was murdered while I was there, the hotel developer, said that murder is a business procedure in Russia, and he's absolutely right. So you have to wonder what Trump is really trying to do by legalizing bribery in the foreign context, which suggests it's going to be legalized here as well. And the quote that I saw from him today, he is talking specifically about arms dealers, how arms dealers and fossil fuel concerns have been at a disadvantage by being prosecuted for the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. That just means they've been prosecuted for trying to engage in bribery. And I don't understand why anyone would think it's a good idea to legalize bribery, especially in this setting, especially when you consider that he has been doing Putin's bidding on all sides. It's alarming that he's trying to bring the KGB kind of thuggery into the United States business practices.
Yeah, I totally get it. Back in the 80s and 90s, I was working with an international relief organization, and we did business. I was in Russia as well, although I was never solicited for a bribe. But I also went into Haiti to negotiate, for some property that we were going to use to build a program there, and their equivalent of housing and urban development. Their government minister, cabinet level or whatever their equivalent is in Haiti. Just sitting in the meeting with me and my colleague from Germany, just right out said, give me $20,000 and we can make this happen. Cash, I want cash. And I was able to say, I'm sorry, that's against the law for me to do that. We just, I could go to jail in the United States if I gave you that bribe, which was a really easy out for us.
Right.
And I just can't understand why Donald Trump would want to end that law unless around him, or maybe the Russian oligarchs who are pulling his strings, want to be able to take or receive bribes.
Absolutely.
I can't see any upside to the United States of America. I can't, and I know my colleagues, I still am in touch with many of the people that I worked with back in the 80s and 90s. I participated in starting programs in Uganda and Colombia and Peru, in India, in Russia, there was another dozen countries, and in the United States. And I just can't imagine that any of them would ever want to, have somebody say, give me 20 grand and I'll make this happen. And by the way, if you don't, there can be some consequences to you because I know you can do it.
And we're talking about millions. And put it in the context of Trump when he was running for office of this re-election period, offering anyone, the oil tycoons, the fossil fuel planet destroyers, on the record, if you give me $1 billion, I will set aside the climate regulations.
That's right. Trump solicited a bribe.
How is that not a bribe?
Yeah.
How is this whole thing? Can I just say a little bit about treason? I don't know how much time you have.
Yeah.
I'm talking now about what he's done with the military, politicizing the military. He's politicized every organization that has force and the rule of law. To me, it's clear that he's getting ready to do something horrifically nefarious, like boots on the ground, etc. I think it's time for people to start thinking about how they're going to arm in their own communities. And I want to say a word about sedition. I get pushback sometime on social media about this. How is that not sedition? I want to remind your viewers, the Colorado Supreme Court found that Trump had engaged legally in insurrection in that Article 14, 14th Amendment, Article 3 case that came out of Colorado. The U.S. Supreme Court put their stamp on that finding. When the Supreme Court said that Colorado couldn't enforce this law on its own because it would lead to chaos, they did not set aside the Supreme Court of Colorado's finding that Trump had engaged in insurrection. So there is a standing Supreme Court imprimatur on the finding that Trump is an insurrectionist. Yeah. So if you are fighting against an insurrectionist and you're fighting a seditionist, you are the patriots. You are not the seditionist, you're fighting the seditionist. So I want to make that clear. Well, I think we're going to have to talk about our neighbors getting armed and what we're going to do in the blue states when Trump starts cutting off benefits, FEMA, et cetera, to blue states. There are a number of things we can do, including why would you even pay taxes if we're going to be treated like that? But we need to get serious about what we're dealing with here. Trump has politicized the military and the Department of Justice, all law enforcement, and he's put in unqualified lackeys. He's doing this for.
I get it, and I've been saying for years and years. I've had for years on this program. I used to debate right wingers, and sometimes they would come on. In fact, some of the militia people would come on. And talk about how, we're going to take on the government with our guns. And I'm like, you can't take on the government with your guns. Try taking down a Black Hawk helicopter and a battalion. It ain't going to happen. And so I have to push back on let's get weapons here, although I'm not discouraging people from being armed. But to your point, and I think most Americans don't realize, if Trump gives an order to the military to shoot at civilians, to do a Kent state, only, on steroids, a slaughter of people who are protesting, for example. If Trump gave that order is subject to the senior JAG officers, the senior attorneys in the Pentagon saying, no, that's an illegal order. The military should not follow that. And those are the people that he just fired.
He fired. That's exactly right. The adjutant generals, the JAGs for the military, there's no reason for Trump to fire them. Their sole role is to tell Trump that this order that you've given is unconstitutional.
That's right.
Why would he fire them other than the fact that he is planning on giving unconstitutional orders, which he's already done?
Yes.
So,
well, and he tried to do in his last term in office, as General Milley tells us. He wanted Milley's people to shoot at protesters, just shoot at their legs, right?
Right. I hope Milley and the other generals I hope the generals are all talking to each other. I assume they're not sitting quietly or off on vacation.
Well, I don't know about Raising Cane, right? I mean,
my God.
Who Trump says showed up in Iraq, a 3-star general showed up illegally wearing a MAGA hat. Now, General
said,
Kane,
I'll kill for you.
Yeah, and General Kane says, no, I never did that, or at least the people around him say he never did that. But these are, I'm with you, Sabrina. We just have, by the way, 10 seconds. We have to take this stuff very seriously.
Right, I agree. There's no hyperbole that's off the table here. What's happening is very serious, and it took Hitler less than 2 months to completely undo the German.
53 days. Check out the Haake Take over on Substack, Haake. Haake Take. Do I have that right, Sabrina?
You do, the Haake Take, and it's free.
Okay, absolutely, and it's really worth reading. Just go to Substack.com and plug it in, and it'll pop right up. Sabrina, thanks so much. It's always great talking with you.
Thanks for all you do. Thank you.